Board of Education to order, and we would ask that everyone, once again, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Bobby, roll call, please.
Amy Long?
Yes.
Danielle Yushka?
Yes.
Scott Gentleman?
Yes.
Jessica Mead?
Here.
Tara Gislin?
Here.
Patrick McKenna?
Present.
Andy Berry?
Yes.
Tim Fuller?
Here.
Mike Colby?
Here. Okay, and we are then at the point of the public comment section. No one has signed in, so we will then go on to next one, which is section E, discussion regarding potential settlement options. At this time, I will defer to Council Kevin Terry.
Thank you. Again, my name is Kevin Terry. I'm not Dean Dietrich, and this isn't Kevin Terry. Dean wasn't able to make it. This is Ben. Ben is a summer associate at the firm. He's interested in school law and wanted to participate and just observe how business is conducted, so I appreciate you letting him tag along. Certainly not getting billed for 2 attorneys here. The first agenda item is discussion regarding the status of the Village of Mattoon versus the district. I want to start by acknowledging the unique nature of this discussion. Frequently, the board would discuss lawsuits and pending litigation in closed session, but given the nature of this specific suit and the issues involved in the suit, the board has made a decision to have this discussion in open session. What that means is the discussion itself will be limited in nature, and there may be, depending on the scope of the discussion and where it leads, a need to end discussion regarding the lawsuit at this time and consider having discussions about the suit at a future date in closed session, depending on, again, where these discussions lead. The intent here is to update you, the board, on the status of the lawsuits, to briefly discuss some of the allegations in the suit, and update you on some of the correspondence we've had from opposing counsel. So first and foremost, it's important to understand that the open meetings law issue has been resolved. That has been an agreement reached between the district and special counsel for the county, so that is no longer an issue anymore. The only lawsuit we're talking about is the suit filed by the Village of Mattoon and a number of residents. That suit consists of 2 main claims. One, that adequate notice was not provided to residents and to the village of the board's decision to close Mattoon Elementary. And the second being that the decision itself was made arbitrarily and capriciously. Without getting into the specifics, it's our position that the district has strong defenses to both of those claims and has the ability to defend both of those claims should it want to pursue litigation. The suit itself has been assigned to a judge in Shawano County, and we have not yet received correspondence from that judge regarding the initial hearing in that case, but we believe that the reason we have not heard from the judge is because opposing counsel has reached out with a settlement offer to the board. I want to share that offer with you, and I'll answer any questions that you may have related to the settlement offer, related to the lawsuit itself, but I want to remind the board that this first agenda item is simply for discussion regarding the lawsuit. It's not been agendized for possible action. There is an opportunity later in the meeting to discuss action or potential action regarding the lawsuit, but I would encourage you to be mindful of the fact that this is discussion and for discussion purposes only. The settlement offer that we've received is in sum a offer to dismiss the claim entirely with prejudice as it relates to the decision to close Mattoon Elementary if the district is willing to make a commitment to keep the school operational at least through the duration of the 2016-2017 academic year. Now, the claim itself would not release future claims. It would not address an individual citizen or the village's ability to bring future claims. It would not affect any process of detachment. The settlement offer would address the notion that a release of claims does not address the village's ability to, or the residents' ability to file a petition for detachment. And the original settlement offer included a requirement that the board rescind the initial action. That's already been done, so that piece of the offer has been satisfied. With that, I think the updating portion of the lawsuit is complete. I want to be able to open it up to you as board members to ask any questions that you might have related to the lawsuit, understanding that some of the discussion may have to be limited as we are in open session.
I just wanted to clarify, so what you said was future claims could be made, future injunctions could be made against the school district.
All settlements, a plaintiff doesn't have the ability to release future claims. It's not legal for an aggrieved to say, I will never sue a party in the future. So in theory, yes, a future claim could be brought. However, it's my understanding that counsel for the plaintiffs in this case believes that a settlement would address the concerns of both the plaintiffs in this matter, and from what counsel understands, many of the residents in Mattoon. So there's a leap of faith or trust in the statement by counsel, but opposing counsel believes that the likelihood of a future claim is pretty low.
What is the definition of adequate notice? Saying we didn't provide adequate notice, what is that?
The statutes don't define adequate notice. As you all are aware, there is no specific statutory process for closing an elementary school or closing a school in the district. So the term adequate notice as drafted in the complaint is not clearly articulated. That would be something that would be litigated.
And what is our responsibility to individual families that are affected? You know, obviously, we don't have affidavits from every family affected, and I'm not saying that more weren't, but with the ones that we do have, what is our responsibility to them as a school board for the entire district?
You as a school board make decisions in the best interest of the district.
Right.
And so there is no specific duty owed to residents outlined in the statutes that govern your responsibility as board members or in the statutes that provide for the authority to act as a school board as a whole.
And, one of the things that they claimed in here was that we're depriving them, the children, of free public education without reasonable and adequate notice. Are we really doing that, in your opinion?
I don't know that I want to answer that right now.
That's fine.
And I don't believe that I want to address specific
Okay.
offenses to the claims.
Gotcha.
Because if this lawsuit continues, it's not appropriate to have that discussion.
Understandable.
In general timeline, if this process proceeds?
That's a good question, and there's a little bit of a guessing game to be played. From a stereotypical or a typical proceeding in this manner, it would go pretty quickly. A hearing could be scheduled rather quickly to determine whether or not an injunction is granted. A judge could make that decision rather quickly. Weeks or maybe a couple months at the most to get that initial decision. But in terms of reaching a resolution on the lawsuit itself, the initial determination on the injunction would not be the end of the line. And so the suit itself could go on for a long time. It would not be unusual for it to be a year process.
Now, is this a jury trial, if it would go, or is this a, this
That would have to
decision by
be
the judge?
decided by the parties.
Okay.
The initial hearing to determine the injunction order, a temporary order, if that's what is sought, would not require anything more than a judge to make that decision.
Thank you.
In terms of determining a temporary injunction, so it could go one way or the other in terms of further, whether it continues or not, a judge could dismiss the injunction, is that right? Or potentially carry it on forward, or?
Yeah, the judge has wide discretion in the decision he or she makes.
But would it be in either parties, so if we had the temporary injunction hearing in like a week or something, and the judge determined that, determined not to issue the injunction, and I don't know if we can discuss this right now, but, so, so then let's say we vote tonight that we're going to shut down Mattoon, the temporary restraining order hearing continues, the petitioner or the plaintiffs do not win, then we continue on, in September, and they have the school's closed. What kind of relief could be sought then? If the school's already been closed down, the kids have been going to school for a year, what kind of relief could they ask for? I guess, are we looking at major monetary damages? Is this something, because that's one of my bigger concerns is with the budget the way it is, I don't want to hurt the school district.
Unfortunately, it's a hard question to answer. The case that's currently pending would be a case of first impression. This is not a claim that has been brought, or certainly not one that's been decided or litigated by a judge. So there isn't case law that we can look to as a starting point. The monetary damages claimed in this matter are not clearly articulated, and we're too early in the process to have a good idea of what those damages would be. And I think that's probably as far as I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else on board, any questions?
So if there aren't any other questions, to summarize, the suit is filed, a judge has been assigned. If no action, the judge will reach out to us to set a hearing date unless a settlement is reached by the parties. The current settlement on the table, or for you to all consider, is for a commitment from the board to keep the school open for 1 year, and the claims would be dismissed. I think that summarizes the discussion. And if there aren't any other questions, Mr. President, it's probably appropriate to move on to the next agenda.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin, appreciate it. Okay, in that case, we will move on to the next item, which is school closure.
I move the board authorize the closure of the Mattoon Elementary School effective June 30th, 2017, and that we add teachers in the elementary schools for classes where the projected class size will be greater than 160% of the projected average class size of the school with the lowest classroom numbers averaged across K4 through 5, and that we add class categorical special ed teachers for Pleasant View, Crestwood, and Spring Valley.
Can you say that one more time?
What What was the question?
You wanna just-
Danielle would like you to restate your motion,
Can you
please.
read it one more time so I can catch all that?
Okay, so
Sorry.
yeah. So I propose that Mattoon Elementary be closed in June 30th, 2017. And that we add teachers in elementary schools for classes where the projected class size will be greater than 160% of the projected average class size of the school with the lowest classroom numbers averaged across K-4 through 5. And that we add a cross-categorical special ed teacher for Crestwood, Pleasant View, and Spring Valley. And if you would like an example of what that the formula I have there means, if the average class size of, say, Mattoon is 15, then any classes that are greater than 24, we will add a teacher. But it's not that simple. You know,
Do you need a second?
it's administered.
Yeah, let's get a second and we'll have
Let's
the.
make sure we're following the rules.
I'll stop,
Yeah,
Right. I'll second it.
okay,
and then I'll continue.
Ramble on.
okay. The motion by Mr. Mary, second by Ms. Gelzo, as he stated it so eloquently. Now we'll have discussion. Andy, please, go ahead.
So it doesn't mean that they can't do other things in schools, like combine class sizes, or if one school has a really small class going, that you wouldn't take those students and put them in some other school. And it also doesn't mean, you know, if we're going to add special ed teachers to Crestwood, for example, that we wouldn't take some of the special ed kids out of North or West or East and send them back to their home schools, and those class sizes would be reduced. And you would achieve that by doing it that way. But what it does mean is that we have discussed for years, and we've said kids should not be pulled out of their home school and shipped over to North, and you know, they should stay in their home school. And we've discussed it, we haven't done anything about it. And part of the reason we do that is, you know, we're trying to save money, and having large class sizes just doesn't make sense to me, to have a class of 32 so we can maintain a class of 12. And it's not that these can't be balanced out. They can be balanced out. There's just been no thought of doing it. You know, it's been discussed, we just haven't done it.
The only fear I have with that, Andy, is when we're having the EBD kids are at North, and they're all at North. So
They're what?
they're all at North. And, you know, so that's a one place to go to for mental health, law enforcement, all of that. You start spreading them all out, and reaction times get longer.
Yeah, but right now, I mean, is it really fair to put all of those kids together and put that kind of pressure on the teachers and then?
That's the flip side.
You
I
know,
guess it's not even the pressure on the teachers, it's the pressure on the other kids
On the
in
kids,
that
yeah.
school.
getting robbed of an education.
Oh, and they are.
Would you suggest, because we don't have cross-categorical in the city schools, correct? They're specialized in the 3 elementary schools.
They're specialized, and the only reason I said that is because,
It's easier to
yeah.
get around in the city.
Yeah, I mean, we're only gonna hire one, we're not gonna hire 2 specialists for each school. I was trying to save a little money.
So, is it okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so, like, I'm personally affected by this and have been for 7 years that I've been running my child to a different school. So, she doesn't have behavioral issues. Our home school would be Crestwood. I'm sure there's more kids out there like her. So if we could more evenly distribute those kids, and then maybe the ones that require law enforcement still be distributed within the city, would that make a difference, or is that not? Like you can distribute those other kids, you know, like East is the deaf and hard of hearing school, and that's where she's set up, but maybe a rural school could be set up for that.
Federal law
Yeah.
specifically says that children are to be placed in their least restrictive environment which is by definition their home school where they reside. And then the resources need to be placed there. And Andy's right, we're not in compliance with that in a large number of cases. What he's proposing is that we correct that and then staff to accommodate that correction. And I think that's a reasonable and prudent thing for the district to do.
What would be the cost of that? That sounds, I mean, it sounds like a lot of money. I mean, we just voted
No.
to take money out of,
I don't think it should cost more than $300,000.
That's a lot of money.
is that right?
There are ways and ways to look at this. Now, what's happening is the board is beginning to get into a discussion of an administrative responsibility for staffing, and we can explain it very simply, but I think the plan has to be worked through in terms of how it would actually be conducted. Let me give you just one possible scenario. We have, at the high school, more special education teachers for 176 or thereabouts students than we have English or math teachers for almost 800 students. And I'm not criticizing the work that those people do, but there are a couple of them who are certified to deal with special education children at the elementary grades and age levels. It's conceivable that there could be some internal reassignments. Would it be ideal? Probably not. I'm not sure there is an ideal solution, but that's just one possible scenario, and it isn't one that I necessarily would say had to be done, but it is certainly one way that you can approach it without having to add a large number of staff. You may still have to add one or two. The other problem I think the administration would face on that is simply the availability of candidates to fill the positions. The reality is that our teachers are the lowest paid of all the districts around us. Special education teachers come at a premium to begin with, and getting the candidates we want to fill those positions is going to be a challenge, regardless of what it is.
I mean, Andy, how many positions are we? How many positions did you say?
Well, I mean, I look at this and maybe it's 5 positions, but I'm not arguing with Don if we can't reevaluate what we're doing and how things are set up.
Well, I think we definitely need to do that, and I think that's very appropriate. And I mean, in other discussions, we've talked about the value of multiple tracks, the value of pooling resources, not spreading resources out.
Well, I view this as a 1-year thing.
So we would hire all these people, change curriculums, change approaches to how we do education at every single school for 1 year and then undo it.
We would
Well,
certainly not.
Not
be
every single,
undoing-
some schools wouldn't change.
We would
Some
certainly
would.
not be doing a different curriculum in every building at all. It would be a common
You're right,
curriculum.
I shouldn't say curriculum. Educational structure, I mean, if,
The service delivery would be slightly different, is really what you're getting at.
right.
Yeah.
How do you choose what kids get moved like that? How does that?
Well, there again, you get into a process, it's a technical process, and it is a review of the individual educational programs of each student to determine whether their home school is indeed the least restrictive environment for that child. There may well be some students for whom going back to the home school is not the most reasonable step to take. We have children right now who are placed out of our district, whose IEPs call for them to be given other services by other providers and other agencies, simply because of the severity of the needs. So there's a wide range in there, and there's not a single simple answer to the question.
When also as kids come in, they don't, once, new 4K kid comes in or new kindergartner comes in, they know that kid no longer has, this Crestwood, I just combined them. Crestwood would be their home school and they wouldn't have to be shipped anywhere else, so that would always be their school. So to me, that would be more beneficial for, because I agree, you know, like if kids don't need to be moved, then don't move them, yeah, you know, unless it would be in their best interest, but as for the kids that are coming in, then that would always be their school.
So when you make this motion, is that kind of what you're thinking for future kids, or are you thinking of moving kids now?
Well, I don't know that that matters.
Does it-
I'm thinking we'd move kids if they wanted to be moved. Certainly if they wanted to be moved, they would move. And even some cases, they would move.
And in some cases, they couldn't move. If, just for example, a child was diagnosed, labeled as severely cognitively disabled, that's a very low incidence kind of thing, and it probably makes sense that those children are housed together in a single building with a single provider. Certainly we do that at the middle and high school levels. For other students, particularly for LD and EBD, behaviorally disordered and learning disabled, it makes much more sense for them to be in that least restrictive environment of their home school, for most of them, and there are occasional exceptions to that.
There's a question, Andy, is on this here, how would it affect, like for this year, like your lower enrollment schools like Mattoon and Pleasant View, or probably your lower enrollment schools, how would their enrollment be affected this year by your plan? I don't understand, I'm trying to understand.
Well,
How what kids are moved and where, how it's,
so there's some classes in the district right now that are over 30
right.
kids.
I'm just saying what will happen this year then.
Well,
and,
I'm leaving that up to administration to work that out, because if it was up to me, I'd say, well, let's combine some classes. So in Mattoon, for example, where maybe the class size right now, there's six grades there, and the class size is, say, 90 kids. Well, if you divide that by 5, the class size would be 18. However you combined it, however they chose to combine it, but I'm not.
so then you'd bring from some of the others in to equalize it out somewhat.
I'm saying that you might take 3rd, 4th, and 5th and have 2 teachers for 3rd, 4th, and 5th.
Yeah.
You're not
But that-
talking about moving kids to and from school this coming year?
No, I'm not.
Right.
Other than special ed kids, I'm not talking about moving kids, changing boundaries. nothing.
Okay, so the enrollment at the schools would be matter with teachers and stuff. I mean, the schools would, except for special ed, the enrollments would stay for this year, basically
Basically the same, like 2-3 kids more.
basically the same, with 2 or 3 kids or whatever for
Yeah,
this year.
and it's projected, you know, if 30 kids have opened and enrolled out of Mattoon, then it's up to administration to figure out how they're gonna get those class sizes up.
The only other caveat I'd point out is that you don't just take special ed kids and move them someplace. They do have to go through the staffing process with that individual educational plan on the team, which includes the parents, who have a voice at the table. And consequently, you may find some students that could be moved that the team may agree won't be moved. That can happen. And it depends on the specifics of that individual educational plan. So it gets perhaps technically a little difficult, but if the general trend is to put kids back into their least restricted environments where they belong, which means putting them in their home schools as a general policy, that's exactly the right thing to do, and you know, I think that Andy's put his finger on something we need to address.
I think Jeannie's had her finger.
Yeah, go ahead, Gina.
Okay, I agree with Andy, it's a good idea, but administration, can this be done in 2 months?
Well, the motion was to,
No. Yeah,
Was to-
the motion is,
For this year.
This-
It's for this year.
For this coming year?
yeah,
Okay, school starts in, well, it's June,
Seems like a
July,
lot.
August, September, 3 months.
Can I follow that up with a point, just a point of clarification, please? So Andy, you're talking essentially of 3 cross-categorical for the 3 rural schools that don't have them. And I'm aware of at least 2 classes that you're referencing in city, in town, that are at 30 or above. So it's easily the potential to hire 5 additional staff members for next year.
Yep.
Actually more if you don't make adjustments appropriately to the class sizes
Correct.
and the tune, so potentially
That's
it
right.
could be 7, 9.
That's right.
On top of
If
the
class
ones
sizes in Mattoon are 10, well, then every class that's over 16.
Or 16.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't advise administration to leave those class sizes at 10.
No.
The district has done a very good job, the administration has done, in my estimation, looking at the work they've done, a very good job of doing combination grades like 4-5, 3-4, where you run into those very low enrollment problems. And, you know, those kind of options should still be on the table to give the administration maximum flexibility in terms of how they're going to go about doing this.
So that would result in curriculum changes. I mean, because you
No.
can't teach the same curriculum, you know, to 4 or 5 classes.
No, what happens is what's called looping, or multi-age grouping, where you have the same group of kids, you teach one curriculum one year and you teach the other curriculum the next year. You don't try to teach 2 curricula at one time. And we've done some of that, in fact, in the district in terms of multi-age grouping, where this has been done, and it's been done successfully. In fact, we went through a period where we had some of our staff trained by folks from one of our universities in how to do just exactly that. So,
Just one question I have is, okay, like you said, that would keep Mattoon open this year, but then at the end of next year, wouldn't it all have to be changed again? When the school closed next year then? You know, with these
What
numbers?
would have to change?
With moving the kids around and stuff then? In another year, you know, this would, you know, for this year and then next year,
Yep, I put it up.
you know, I'm just saying, then next year would all change again.
I don't know that it would all change. Some of it would, simply because you'd be redrawing attendance boundaries in the process. So some students would be relocated at the end of that year. But it wouldn't necessarily change everything else.
Any other questions or discussion on the motion?
I feel like I need more information, but I don't know that we're gonna get it.
Can it be read again? Sorry. I think I wrote Mattoon closed
Should we
2017.
refresh everyone on the motion?
Basically
Probably.
closing
Okay.
out.
Yeah, Andy,
I think I
Andy,
got
if you
it,
would, one more time and very eloquently and loudly, please restate your motion so that everyone in the room hears it one last time.
I think I got it.
Did your computer?
Okay, yeah, my computer's giving me a little grief. So I propose to close Mattoon Elementary on June 30th, 2017, and to add teachers in the elementary schools for classes where the projected class size will be greater than 160% of the projected average class size of the school, with the lowest classroom numbers averaged across K-4 through 5. And to add cross-categorical special ed teachers for Crestwood, Pleasant View, and Spring Valley.
Okay.
That's the same thing you had written down, Bobby. Probably different motions by now, but.
And
No, I think that was,
I'll reinforce that Andy made the motion and it was seconded by Mrs. Gelzal. We've had discussion. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
what, can we ask for the administration's opinion as far as, I mean, just the three of you sitting there, as far as your thoughts on the closure? On, you know, your opinions as far, and if you don't want to comment, you don't have to, but like Danielle said, I agree, I would like a little bit more information, and if you have an opinion as to whether it's better administration-wise to wait a year, I would like to hear that answer.
My opinion would be that, and I've said this before, you guys are probably sick of hearing it, because it's a great non-answer, I'll admit that. Either way, at this point, we're in tight planning phase. So administratively, I don't think one way or another is easier. I think as a board, what you need to decide is if you feel that closing a school is best for our district, does pending litigation change your mind on that or not? I think that's really what it boils down to at this point. Approximately 2 months ago, the board, a majority of the board felt that it was the right way to go. Does the lawsuit, the pending lawsuit, is that the correct term? Pending lawsuit change your mind one way or another? Administratively, we're late in the game either way, both sides. We've got job postings out that I would have liked to have had filled back in May, that are going to be, if the school remains open, that we have to fill now and actually probably in early July. If the school is closed, we have letters that should have been sent out back in May notifying students of what schools they're going to, what their, what buses they'll be riding, those sorts of things. We have teachers who are waiting to be assigned to schools that should have been reassigned in late May. So 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other.
But it's our job to provide you with that
Right.
direction.
But that's,
That's the direction we'll go.
I appreciate that.
So,
Tara, if I can comment on the motion on the floor. Mine's pretty easy. It's all about dollars. I don't have to worry about what that means in the classroom. I've told you earlier in the prior meeting that we were short about $300,000. And I will have a recommendation at the operations committee as to where to go with that. To add a one-time, one-year position for 6 or more staff, to me, makes the decision moving forward that much more difficult. And to think, given that we have had repeated and projected deficits going forward, that we'd be able to maintain those in the future without passing an operational referendum is highly unlikely.
So, and maybe I'm confused about the motion, but my understanding was that the closure would be in 2017, but the teachers also, the extra teachers would not be added until 2017. Is that correct?
No, they'd have.
So
to
those
be-
changes would happen now?
Yes,
I see.
yes.
I think another point, and Karen is here, Cindy is here. And they have far more knowledge in their field than I do. Cindy in curriculum, Karen in special education, but in some of these cases, I don't know, in our elementary schools, we necessarily have room for, so the IEP would have to dictate their placement, because if students needed pull-out services, some of those smaller elementary schools don't have a classroom for pull-out services. The other side of it is, ideally we want students, if they can, to be learning in their classroom setting. Well, Patrick has brought up curriculum. I don't think curriculum is an issue so much as teaching strategies. And co-teaching, I think, is a very difficult strategy. It's very effective when done right. So while I agree with Andy that ideally this is absolutely a great idea, and maybe Karen and Cindy can comment on it, I don't know how the timing is on all of it to get the right people in the right places to provide the best educational opportunities for students. I don't know if that made sense, Karen, or if you can comment on that a little bit.
At this time, we finished our replacing our special education staff. We were fortunate that we hired 3 exceptional teachers pending board approval at the end of the month. To be able to advertise at this stage of the game for 3 additional teachers will be very difficult. We had one other candidate that met our qualifications, no more past that. The concern I have, although it would be great to have kids in their home school, here we are in the middle of June. And the candidate pool is going to be very short. Trying to get a hold of parents to hold IEPs to determine even what class sizes are is going to be challenging.
It sounds like it would be a nice, like you said, like, if they, it's a nice plan and stuff, but if it was next year done with it, it would be much easier to implement.
Yeah,
Correct.
I gotta think, how many years have I sat on this board and other people sat on the board, and we say, let's do this next year. Let's do it next year. I'd say, as long as Don's been here, that's kind of, Don's always said, special ed ought to be in their home schools. But we really haven't done anything. Let's do it next year. So I guess, if everybody else is good with that, I'm good. Let's do it next year. Let's put it off a year.
That never happens.
Is there any more discussion on the motion?
Cindy, did you have any comments or anything you want to say?
Well, I'll just go back to Tim's question, how is it going to affect Mattoon and the smaller populated schools? Mattoon is lucky enough to have kids from Pleasant View and Crestwood that come there for the learning disabilities program. And if you put programs back in those schools, it will make the Mattoon population smaller.
Yep, right.
And I agree, I think it is a great thing to work toward. And Andy, yes, it's been talked about, but to put the motion on the table and expect it to happen right away for next year without the proper planning and timing of putting it all together, to me, it seems like we're spending more money for 1 year and then taking it out because we won't be able to sustain the program with the projected deficiencies that we have. So let's put it into a long-range plan and get it accomplished for the kids to stay in their home schools.
Yeah. Well, my only point here is that we don't do very good at a long-range plan.
Well,
We don't.
tonight's the start of it.
Well, perhaps the answer is to bifurcate the motion. So, I mean, there is the reality you're
Can
dealing
we call the
with.
question? Is that possible?
Please.
Sorry to interrupt, Don. I think we voted, it's time, past time to vote.
I'd really like to finish my comment, if I may. If you're dealing with a situation where you have a potential resolution to litigation, and if you bifurcate the motion so that you simply authorize the closure of Mattoon on June 30, 2017, and then work through the instructional and operations committees to figure out how best to staff and move things around, and approach that as a separate activity that will occur regardless, I think you're probably in better shape. I think we need to keep in mind that what we're talking about here is, are we going to expend the money delivering services to kids, or are we going to expend it, with all due respect to Kevin, are we going to spend it on lawyers and litigation? That's really the bottom line issue. And the educational issues can be addressed separately, but will probably take more time.
We do have a call to question.
With that, there going to need to be an amended motion.
In order to accomplish what Don just said, yes, the motion would have to be amended.
Or it could be just defeated in another motion.
Or defeated in another motion. So we do have a call to question. Bobby, roll call vote.
Danielle Yushka.
I'm not, so I'm voting on Andy's thing right now.
Yes, the motion as stated.
Consent?
I think discussion is over, G.
Yeah, it is.
Question is
I
called.
guess I just
You didn't understand.
stand. This is,
You can pass too and be called
You can-
again at the end.
you will come
You can
back.
say pass
okay.
and wait.
And if I say no, a new motion
Oh,
could be
she's
made.
just trying to
A new
understand.
motion to be made.
It's a motion.
Yes.
have to say no, because it,
Okay.
Scott Jensen,
I'm gonna say no.
Jessica Mead,
No.
Tara Gissel,
No.
Patrick McKenna,
No.
Andy Mary,
Yes.
Tim Fuller,
No.
Jeannie Lund,
No.
and Mike Holding.
No. 8-1, motion as stated, it is defeated.
I move that Mattoon Elementary School be closed beginning for the 2016-17 school year. And that ad hoc committee be formed to work with the Village of Mattoon for possible alternative models of education for the future.
I'll second it.
Can you explain that, Patrick?
Yeah, I think part of the situation is not addressing or feeling rushed through this process. But I think part, as the Andigo School District, what we face is that we need buy-in from the Village of Mattoon if we're going to create an educational model that works there. I don't know if there will be a school there in the future if this passes, but I think this board has a willingness to work with the Village of Mattoon, if they're willing to, sit down, and if an ad hoc committee wants to work on this, I think we should have the full support of that and try to come up with an alternative model that keeps education in Mattoon. I don't know if that's possible financially. I don't know if it's possible educationally, but I think it's a worthwhile thing. And I think also, we voted to close Mattoon. I think it's a reasonable thing to do. This is within the standard of how other schools have been closed here in the district in the past. It's painful and difficult. And we face financial, educational responsibilities that call us to move forward and not put things off another year, another year, another year.
I am wondering why we don't work something through here on this school year. And I know that we've tried to do this before. Yeah, I've tried to work this through before.
I think that's part of the reason. I think that there's a belief that if we stall and delay, that if we push things off, that things will continue as they are. But we have reached a point financially, fiscally, educationally, frankly, in the model of education in which we have 7 individual single-track schools with some minor exceptions, is not the appropriate education model. We talked about that. I think this is the first step. I think there will be other schools that will need to close. I think we will need to, we will need to make changes on a broader level. And this is the beginning. And from a budgetary standpoint, we've heard Tim talk about, the shortfall that we face. I think we bear responsibility not to take from the, for structural funding of schools that is basic operations from the fund balance. I think that's a basic principle. Special exceptions are things outside of that, like the Fab Lab. That makes sense to me. Taking operational expenses out on a year-to-year basis is a bad approach for the board. And we voted on this in April.
I think for me, the biggest difference, and that's why I wanted to ask administration, and it sounds like regardless, in some ways it's gonna be okay, but in some ways it isn't, whether we shut Mattoon down or keep it open because of the fact that, we've had barriers to stop us from continuing the momentum. Now there's gonna be issues either way. And I don't like being the bad guy, but I don't mind doing it if I have to, but I also don't like being bullied. And I feel like the board is being bullied by this lawsuit, and I'm offended by it. I really do, and but at the same time, I'm not going to make a decision because of how I personally feel, because I feel like that's what's being done on the other side. I don't want our district to have to pay, no offense, an attorney to, and I don't know what the amount would be, and I'm concerned too that, let's say that if we pass this, it goes to the temporary restraining order, we are successful, but then they continue, and we don't know what kind of relief they're gonna seek. In the complaint it says, there is no way to value what these individual people are losing. And I don't know if they'd be successful in that or not, but, I mean, let's say they win $300,000-$400,000. I mean, that's what our budget shortfall is right now, so. Although I feel like I'm being bullied into this decision, I'm concerned because of the school district as a whole, that we would be hurting the district by shutting them down. But then on the other side of the coin, I'm concerned too with what Andy and what you're saying, Patrick, about how long are we gonna delay this? You know, and I'm concerned that, you know, we could make a vote to say we shut it down in 2017, and then in the next election, you know, the chips fall as they will, and new people come in and rescind that motion, and then we're right back to square one. So, yeah, I'm really stuck here, but as much as I don't want to be pushed into making a decision, I feel like I'm backed into a corner at this point.
I mean, you bring up a good point. I mean, there's nothing that stops anyone from, you know, an injunction next year.
That's
for
true
some
too.
reason as well.
I think they'd have less standing next year, to be honest.
Yeah,
I think,
sounds like there's
yeah.
very little now.
I agree,
Now.
but I mean, I'm listening to what our attorneys say, and they say this is a case of first impression, meaning we're not sure what the outcome could be, and that does scare me, and being conservative, I understand that too, as much as it angers me when I read this.
Kevin, would you like to interject something here?
Not specifically, other than to note that certainly this action would not would not settle the claim as offered. And I don't know that we need to have further discussion on that. The strength of our defense is assessed as the case as a whole, and the likelihood of success as it relates to the case on a whole is different than the likelihood of success at the initial TRO hearing.
Yep.
Which, for the board's understanding, should a judge issue an injunction, it would supersede the board's action.
I guess my question, what's your thoughts on this ad hoc committee? I mean, we didn't offer any ad hocs to Pleasant View, Spring Valley, Northeast and West. We're gonna close school, we have to close the school.
Ad hoc is at the pleasure of the board, right? So I mean, if there's no interest from the Village of Mattoon to work with the board on this, if there's no consensus on the board, then that's something that becomes irrelevant. If there is a groundswell of interest and support, which I think this would certainly prompt, then we can move forward, I think, in a much more constructive way than trying to do that under the current circumstances.
Well, but I just think this here is gonna cause, this isn't just, it's just Mattoon, it's gonna involve the whole district, you know, all the other schools, because this involves every school in this district, you know, especially that, so.
Some of those schools positively.
Some are, but I just don't think it's gonna be good for the school district right now.
Can I ask a question? Do we know of the teachers that have been at Mattoon, currently there in past years? Do we know how many of them want to stay? Because I don't know if it's rumor or not, but I heard that there are several that want to get placed within the district and wouldn't necessarily stay there, so we could potentially have several new teachers at Mattoon if it stays open.
Danielle, I don't know that I want to put any of the teachers on the spot. I think had none of this been discussed, I don't know that any of them would have been looking to leave necessarily, so that'd be completely speculation. I think we probably have staff members who are really looking at their future long-term at this point, and they'd be silly not to. So, you know, without going into detail, I think we have a group of teachers there that liked the school they were at, enjoyed working there, but now are thinking, do I think 1 year ahead? Do I think multiple years ahead, and really looking at their careers and their longevity? Because I think you have a staff there that is very committed to the Antigo School District one way or another. And I hope, I'm speaking on their behalf, I hope that was fair.
Thank you.
That's fair.
That's fair.
Can we just move on the motion of the closure of Mattoon School and then as a board come together and make a plan for the future for all our schools and what we have planned. And just saying, you know, Mattoon and, you know, let's just go with the motion of Mattoon School right now, and as a board come together.
I would entertain an amendment if we want to remove if someone wanted to remove the ad hoc committee part. Andy, you're shaking your head no?
Well, okay, if you're removing that ad hoc committee part, but we already have an ad hoc committee to go forward with facilities planning.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think that's gonna happen. You know, what you just asked Jeannie is clearly part of what we've already begun.
So I guess maybe Jeannie, I don't understand. What, are you saying bifurcate or take away from the motion the question of the ad hoc committee and just vote on the closure of
Just vote on the
Mattoon?
closure tonight, but that's what we're mostly here
Okay.
right now. And get this ad hoc committee going, because we have to start.
Just to clarify, this is a separate ad hoc committee.
Right, exactly, yes, I know.
Kevin, I guess I'm wondering, and maybe it's all the same because they're on the same, but how much is the Village of Mattoon as opposed to how much is the parents?
I don't know that I understand the question.
Okay, so I guess if we go ahead with closure of Mattoon and we go ahead with, they go ahead with the lawsuit, we go to the judge. I think part of the, and I don't know, maybe it's something we can't discuss, part of it is the Village of Mattoon with our claims of damages, correct? About closing.
There are multiple plaintiffs in this case, the Village of Mattoon and.
So they're covered under the village, is that,
There are multiple plaintiffs in the same action.
okay?
They would all be continuing in that action if a resolution is not reached. And they would be, in theory, awarded damages as a whole. Although some of their claims are unique and the judge may determine those claims separately, they would be moving forward as a whole at this point. And to the extent you're asking what I think you're really asking, and that is the strength of the individual claims of the village as compared to the other individuals, I don't think now is the appropriate time to have that discussion.
Okay.
But what is this, okay, you're gonna accomplish, you think, to close it this year, this and that, but I'm saying from the administrative part, and I don't necessarily agree with Brian on that. I mean, is for the teachers and this stuff like that, so that we get in this lawsuit and this and that gets drug out. I don't see where you figure you're gonna come out. I know you wanna make a decision now, but I don't see what benefits there is to it. I think it's gonna do more harm to the kids, the parents, the people in the district, and the other part of it is, whether you like it or not, it's gonna do the reputation of this board, and that's a big thing. That is a big thing out there, our reputation of this board. And I'm just not just speaking just for Mattoon people, I'm saying district-wide.
It's right.
You know, we have to take that in consideration too.
It's exactly.
You know, this reputation of this board is also very, very important in moving forward.
Yes.
Because this is one issue right now, but it's a stepping stone to other issues. And if our reputation is damaged, it's gonna be hard to move on.
Tim, I think it'd be reasonable certainly if this is something that you feel strongly about, you live in the Village of Mattoon, you could talk to to the people who represent you and say, this is gonna hurt the kids in Mattoon if you carry on this lawsuit. I just wanna say from Tara's standpoint, it's true. People do not like to have things litigated. We were elected to do a job. It is an unpleasant job. And this litigation is something that, you're right, it does not seem democratic. It does not seem very fair. It seems unfair to the kids of Mattoon. It seems unfair to the kids of the entire district. But this is the hand that we've been dealt, and I think it's okay for us to move forward.
And honestly, to Tim's point, in my opinion, and again, you're obviously closer to the Village of Mattoon, I'm assuming the majority of people, maybe not everyone that you speak with, but the majority of the people are in tune with what your beliefs are, Tim, but I believe that my reputation is going to be hurt worse if I vote not to close this down. I feel like we made a decision, we made this decision already, and now we're backing down on it. So, I'm still saying, like I said, that with this lawsuit, and I'm looking I guess in my opinion, I'm looking purely at money, and what the district might have to pay. But I think that my reputation as a school board member would be tarnished more if I vote to not close down. I already am not happy with the fact that I voted to rescind, but I felt like it was the right thing to do at the time.
I've actually had community members say to me that they'll be unhappy if we don't. And there's what's hard about this job is you're gonna make 50% of the people happy and you're gonna make 50% of the people mad. And we're on the losing side either way.
I don't know what you want to say about saving reputation, because at this point, we've heard from community members how we have not done anything to win their trust, and we have deceived them and everything else. So, and if that's from a small portion of the entire district, that's not really something we should let guide our whole decision on the whole district as a whole.
I agree.
I guess, at the meeting where we voted to close Mattoon, before we took that vote, Kim, I pressed you on several issues about what can we do in Mattoon to cut some costs there. And I apologize for pressing you that much, because I should have pressed the whole board. And it's not just me and Tim going back and forth. The board should sit here and make some decisions. And Don has come up with some ideas of what could happen there. And, I guess in my discussions with you, Don, you have kind of said, well, the people of Mattoon don't want to do this or they don't want to do that. Is that correct?
Everybody I've talked to about the possibility of a school of choice or a charter school for Mattoon has rejected the proposal until very recently, where one parent has wondered about turning it into a charter school.
Yeah, and so my point is that maybe Tim says he's not in favor of those kind of things, but it's really up to us as the board to say, well, we just can't go on keeping the school open and running it the way it is, and so we got to try something else. And maybe we might run into a lot of resistance trying to close some other school. So it would make sense that for 1 year we try something. And I know, Brian, you're going to tell me, boy, we're really late in the game to come up with this idea now. And I agree with that. And but I just can't see keeping Mattoon open the way we're going. I have argued that let's think about what we could do there to make it more cost efficient, to change some things. And I'm going to argue that one more time. Let's try and think about that. And if people aren't in agreement with that, well, then certainly I'm going to have to vote with Patrick here.
Mike, may I?
Yes,
I'm actually going to, for a change, go a step further, Andy, believe it or not. I don't know that that's possible for next school year. The reason I say this is I think some of the things Don has proposed require special training for teachers. It's a different form of teaching. If you want us to open a charter school that teaches exactly the same way as our schools already do, then it's not really a charter.
Won't get a charter.
I don't know that we can seek out that training and find the training in the month and a half, 2 months we have left. I guess I'd ask Cindy to weigh in a little bit as well. I mean, I don't.
Keep going, you're on the right track.
I mean, I guess for starters, we need a planning group to come together and decide what is our vision for that school. Is it personalized learning? Is it project-based learning? Is it expeditionary learning? Is it online-based? Is it blended learning? The next step is identifying staff members who are willing to do that, because again, it takes a special skill set. You've got to be interested. If I'm a teacher and my administrator comes in and says, hey, guess what? Laura, you're you're doing project-based learning next year. Go at it. I'm probably looking for a new district. And these are things that take the professional development we're going to need. The sessions have been posted long ago. They've probably filled up in many cases long ago. I just don't possibly see how we could pull that off. For the following school year, sure.
So Patrick's motion
Yeah.
isn't so out of line here,
All right, so
because
ad
that's
hoc committee.
basically what he was asking to do.
I mean, really, I think we need buy-in from people that have not given buy-in for this plan before. And this is an opportunity to do that, and I fully would support that.
And to be clear, I'm not opposed to the idea of a school of choice or anything like that. It's just to get it up and running in 1 year.
Do it successfully, yeah.
You
it's
could
not
do
gonna
it,
happen.
you could do it in 1 year. For the
Not one
fall
and a
of
half months.
2017, if you follow the DPI process, and I don't know if it's changed in the last 4 or 5 years, but the fact is that there are grant monies available grant monies available from the Department of Public Instruction for districts that were proposing to have a charter school that was an instrumentality of the Board of Education. And the first year of that is a planning grant. So you have the resources to spend the money to determine what kind of charter you want, find out who among staff might be interested, get them trained, and I can tell you from personal experience, it is possible to do in a year's time. Moreover, if you get the planning grant and you're successful in opening your charter school in a year's time, you get another grant for the first year or 2 of operations. And then there has been a third grant, which is more or less a replication grant where you pay for other school districts who want a charter school to come in and look and see what you did successfully. Those grant funds can, well, in a district our size, they aren't going to be huge amounts of money, but I can tell you in the instance where we did it in a similar sized district, we wound up getting a grand total in excess of $600,000 over a 4-year period.
But isn't it true that when you get that grant money, it's about the stuff to help your teaching strategies be different? It's maybe a one-to-one computer issue.
Absolutely it
It's
is.
the professional development, and it
Yep.
does not pay for teacher salaries.
Oh, no, it isn't going to pay for teacher
You can't
salaries.
save money because those people in the building are gonna be under grant funding. That's not how it works. It's
Well,
about
but that
stuff.
doesn't really change it may change your staffing pattern in terms of where your staff is. But I'll be perfectly candid with you, when we did it in Waupun, it did not cost $1 additional in staffing to do, and it doesn't have to here.
Right, but I'm just saying you're not getting savings either. You're not costing, it's not costing you
No.
anymore, but you're not getting
No,
the savings.
no, if you're keeping the school open under any circumstance, you're gonna have to staff it, and there's gonna be costs associated with it, that's correct. But if it's a charter school, and it draws enough, which charter schools have a tendency to do, draws enough interest, you're talking about a student population of, we put a cap in Waupun of 120 students, and it didn't take 2 years, and it was up to about 145 to 150. It draws interest, and it makes the operation of the school more cost effective. That doesn't mean it's going to save huge amounts of dollars, but it does mean it's going to put it in the cost-effective range to maintain the operation.
My proposal really is suggesting a partnership that could be a charter school or a school of innovation that is, likely incorporating perhaps a community center, probably a much smaller student population. And also I think some skin in the game for the village of Mattoon, rather than putting fees and, rather than the village of Mattoon paying for lawyers' fees, they could work through this process and develop something that's lasting and sustaining for the village of Mattoon, rather than fight us through on all of this.
But are we setting the precedence here? So a year from now, 2 years from now, we make a movement to close 1 of the 6 remaining schools? And we have a precedent set.
There's no guarantee that what I'm suggesting will work.
Okay.
It's gonna take partnerships from multiple people. I don't even know, I'm not saying, I think I could be convinced to be part of that ad hoc committee, but I am not committing to that right now. That's gonna take people who care about this place and feel that this school is essential for their community stepping forward. And so that's what I'm suggesting. There's risk in it. But we also have a broader responsibility to the district to close schools. And this is step one. You're right, you're right. Pleasant View, Spring Valley, all of the schools, Crestwood, we face changes in the district. This is step one of a larger plan. It's, it's something that we need to move forward on. So maybe, at this temporary injunction, maybe there'll be a new settlement. Maybe the opposing side will say, this is a better plan. We're willing to work with the school board on this. And, they'll withdraw their injunction. That is a possibility. So I say we move forward.
And in my mind, potentially, it could all be a moot point if the petition for detachment goes through.
That's a good
possibility.
That's exactly right.
We don't know that.
We don't know that, but it is a possibility.
Maybe they change their mind.
We don't know how many people have signed the petition or
I
where that's at.
I put that out there because that is part
That
of it.
wouldn't be decided till February.
But Patrick brings up an interesting point, and I think you're alluding to it too, Scott, that, if people want to keep these schools open, maybe we don't have to go through operational referendums. Maybe we just go through fundraising events to keep them open, because the Antigo School District, but the whole district area, Langley County, we do tremendous fundraising. And, and it's things that are important to people. I look at the Boys and Girls Club, I don't know what's that number you're trying to fundraise right now.
$100,000.
$100,000. And even if you had $100,000 to stick into one of our schools, it would help a lot. And if that's what's important to people, I think they, that might, we haven't explored that route. And, we might have to go down some routes that are not traditional here.
Exactly.
I think you need to be a little careful going down that route in terms of what you would do with funds raised, because you could run into a legal problem with the whole idea of a free, appropriate public education if you start paying teachers and operational expenses off of fundraising in the community. I'm not sure that that would withstand the scrutiny of a court.
I certainly agree with that notion.
But there are
Like a bake sale.
Yeah,
sides of our sides.
I'd like for the, as long as they're legal.
So are you saying that we couldn't even raise money, say what about this school right here? There was big donations put into this school.
And they're usually for specific expenditures, and operational expenditures are treated differently. And if you're placing that responsibility on the taxpayers above and beyond their
So to be building a new building, for example, if we could raise, say it was a $10 million building, if we could raise $5 million of that would be all right.
Buildings are required to go through the referendum process, so that's separate aside.
So you couldn't raise money and say, we don't need to run a $10 million referendum, we only need to run a $5 million?
I think it would all depend on how the money's being spent, and I don't know that that's necessarily the topic that we should probably
You're gonna spend $1 million.
Do we have any more discussion on the motion?
We hear the motion.
Yeah. Patrick, would you restate
Yes,
your
I
motion?
move that the Mattoon Elementary School be closed beginning for the 2016-17 school year. And that ad hoc committee be formed to work with the Village of Mattoon on possible alternative models of education for the future. Yeah, this year.
Okay.
This year, beginning. I showed you that.
So closing in a month and a half.
Yes.
Or whatever.
Which we've already done.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, Bobby, roll call vote, please.
Scott Jensma.
Yes.
Jessica Mead.
Yes.
Tara Gissel.
No.
Patrick McKenna.
Yes.
Andy Mary.
I'm gonna pass.
Tim Fuller.
No.
Jeannie Long. Danielle Yushka.
Yes.
Andy Mary,
Yes.
Danielle,
Yes.
Mike Foley,
No. 5-4, motion carries. Okay, then that will then bring us to the next
5-4, motion carried, Mike?
5-4. Yes.
Uh, yes. I missed the third one then.
Correct, Bobby, 5-4?
5-4 as
Yep.
well.
That's correct.
Kevin?
We're moving on to the next agenda item. I would ask that the board simply entertain a motion or consideration of a time to possibly meet in closed session to discuss next steps.
June 28th meeting.
Yeah. Next regularly scheduled meeting of the full board is June 28th.
Would next week be better?
When?
Well, the next scheduled meeting is the 28th. There is a committee meeting on next Tuesday, 21st,
Operations.
Operations Committee.
I'm not available. I don't know that, I don't know that Dean's available. So I can't commit to that date.
Would the 28th be more?
28th would be available at this point.
All right, then we'll add the board's in agreement, we'll add a closed session to the meeting on the 28th to confer with legal counsel. Okay. All right. And that concludes the agenda for this evening's meeting. We'd be looking for a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned.